I recently took a leave of absence because I was burned out. Managing my team takes a lot out of me. I'm socially awkward and I tend to take things personally. I'm returning to work next month. How do I avoid burnout?
You got to focus on the legs of the chair and making sure that you're really attuned to the different stages of burnout. So, what I mean by that is the legs of the chair have to do with diet, exercise, sleep, and social. If you've got all four legs of that chair, that means you can take a load off, you can sit down. You can sit in a chair that has three legs. So if like one of the legs is broken in the chair, but there are three of them are sound, you can still sit in the chair. If a chair only has two legs, you can sit in it and take a load off, but it's going to require that you use your two legs to stabilize it. A chair with one leg, can't even sit in it. It's more work to sit in it than to just stand. The idea of standing, that's just a person who's managing a lot of stuff, managing a lot of stress. So we can stand, human beings can stand for long periods of time, but you've got to sit down just to like rest, recuperate, and all that. And if you're carrying around a lot of weight or holding a lot of things, then you need to sit down more often. So if you think about the legs of the chair from a self-care perspective, so diet, exercise, sleep, and social, we require some combination of those to have those four legs. I won't go into a huge conversation about it here, but what I would say is if you want more information about it, go check out the rest of our material. We got a lot of stuff on there about it. And of those four things, I'd say the most important front line is sleep. Sleep is the most important of those four things, and sleeping effectively, the right amount, not too little, not too much. But around understanding the stages of burnout, to really understand burnout is you got to understand like what is the thing that slips and then what to do about it. So there's three stages of burnout, mild, moderate, severe. And at each one of these things, a P is what slips. It's what I call the three Ps. So in the first one, it's our patterns. When we're in mild burnout, our patterns of self-care slip. And so that's like how we take care of those four legs of the chair. When people start getting mildly burnt out, which happens to most professionals like two or three times a year, it's usually around the end of a quarter or around times where you're like really hustling to get something done. It is not at all weird to get burnt out multiple times a year in a mild sense. And so know when your patterns of self-care start to slip. And when I slip, I don't mean they're gone for a day, but if they're gone for a prolonged period of like more than 10 days to 2 weeks, then you can say that leg has been impacted, the leg is gone. When you're in mild, the first thing that you want to do is reassert your patterns of self-care right away. So if like, let's say you've gone off in your diet for 2 weeks, 2 weeks going off your diet is a lot. It's like a lot to get into a bad habit of eating off whatever your chosen diet is. You got to get it back right away. So as soon as you notice your patterns are shifted for more than a 2 week period, reassert them instantly and keep them stable. And you have to keep them stable like in perpetuity for a long time. Otherwise, you're just going to slip back. But the other thing to do is as soon as you can, take 1 4-day long weekend. So take a Friday and a Monday off as well. And during those 4 days, do not interact with your phone or your computer more than an hour a day. So you could do half an hour in the morning and half an hour at night, or an hour in the morning and an hour at night, but no more than that. And that includes like don't be like texting with people and like doom scrolling or any of that stuff. Just leave it alone. After 4 days, you'll be fine if you put your patterns of self-care back into play. If you don't do that, or if the stress gets worse and your patterns don't improve, then you're going to go to moderate burnout. But maybe you do all that and then you get into moderate burnout anyways because your stress is increasing. The P that slips here is performance. And that means that what you're doing, even though you might still be working a lot or even more, it's that your output isn't as good. And it impacts in two ways. So people can either become avoidant or hypervigilant. If you're avoidant, that means you're avoiding parts of your job or all of your job. And for some people, they might be doing everything else but avoiding this one thing. And emails are typically the place where these start showing up. They start taking forever to respond to emails or emails with people that they don't particularly like, or they start being avoidant of dealing with people they don't like. So people can become avoidant when they're in moderate burnout, or they can become hypervigilant. And hypervigilant is like you're doing stuff at a crazy pace, like super fast. As soon as something comes in, you handle it. So your output either stays the same or increases, but it's that the output isn't very good. There's lots of errors, lots of shortcuts, a lot of indulgencies. And people can become hypervigilant and avoidant. So it's that kind of terrible combination of both. If you find yourself in that space, then taking one long weekend is not enough. but also waiting until you've got a 2-week vacation is like nightmare scenario. Don't do that because you're going to get even more burnt out. The best thing to do is to take 5 long weekends in a 3-month period. 2 of them should be 4-day long weekends, and 3 of them should be 3-day long weekends. So think of across a quarter, put them in your schedule, take those long weekends, and do the thing with your phone as well, where you only have like 1 hour within a day. If you do that and you also put your patterns of self-care back into play, then you'll be fine, like within a few-ish months. Moderate burnout is experienced by most professionals every couple of years. It's usually around getting a promotion or getting a major project done or going through a really turbulent time in the business. It is important to address this though, and it's super important not to try and wait it out until your like annual vacation because it's gonna get worse. The last is severe burnout. The P that slips here is personality. So you're not the same person, you're showing up differently. And that means that our ability to manage our emotional labor has dropped because our patterns of self-care, especially our sleep, aren't in play. So you become reactive, avoidant. People who are typically very gregarious either become like way more so or become like quite silent. People who are typically not gregarious and quite silent become like almost absent. It can make people become like explosive, highly touchy, highly defensive, or completely like not care at all. Um, Severe burnout used to be like relatively rare in the workplace, but it's increased quite a bit as one of the results of COVID. And so what happens here is you have to actually take like a longer leave of absence. Minimum should be 2 weeks, but I'd encourage people if they can to take 6 weeks. And of course, it also means patterns of self-care get put back into place for a minimum of 2 weeks in a stable condition. And there's usually some kind of delegation that needs to go on, forced delegation or collaborative delegation. So either you work with your boss to delegate or they just delegate for you. And finally, what should happen is some kind of outside source of therapy. And it should be like short-term cognitive behavioral therapy if you're in this space. So first thing is watch those legs of the chair. It's the pillars of self-care. You have to keep those in place. If you don't keep them in place, you're going to get burnt out. And you're probably going to get into stages of burnout no matter what, like at least into mild, but you gotta stay really aware of those self-care pillars. And then after that, really understand those 3 Ps and how that shows up for you. And then if you see yourself slipping from one stage to a next stage, then you got to do the work to get back. When it comes to burnout, I really encourage people like get behind in the driver's seat here. Do not be a passenger in your own health. You have to take accountability for identifying when you're getting burnt out and applying these strategies.